He had the admiration of directors. I remember in my childhood when we were at Venice and he met Visconti, and Visconti said to him, "You're a real director." I've never seen a film, any film like the films that he made, in the way that if you cut it a few frames shorter, it sort of had one feeling, and if you cut it longer, it had another feeling. It's as if you were dealing with dynamite. He used to get absolutely crazy sometimes if he couldn't get the shot that he wanted. I mean, not as a kind of prima donna. It's as if it really hurt him, as if it was unsupportable.
You're at the British Film Institute in the early 70s and you come across Bill Douglas's script for what was to be My Childhood. What were your first impressions of that script?
It was very striking. It was very striking because of the way it was written. It's not only what was written, but the way it was written. You know how in a script you've got place, time. Yeah. There was none of that. And the way that it was written was, the only word that comes to mind is poetic. In that the way that he described an event, you could see the shots. So that I realized that it's not only that I was seeing the film, but he was seeing the film, which is much more important, as he was writing the script. And it was very concrete, in a way that, as you know, with most scripts, you have the scene defined, the action defined, and then you think, well, they're going to do probably 3, 4, 5 setups. But the way that Bill wrote it, there was only one setup. It couldn't be, and you could tell from the way he described it that it was a mid-shot or a long shot. He never used terms like mid-shot, close-up, etc., etc. It was always the description told you how big the shot was. And then there was the substance of the script, and it seemed to me very intense. I mean, after you see his films and you read the script and you say, yes, it was always there. And he said something which I've taken to heart, by the way. I mean, when I write scripts, he says people speak in two ways. One in cliches, yeah, and the other in completely original and intense ways. Anything in between is not interesting.
He cast two very raw, potentially troublesome young lads as his leads in certainly in the first film, but the first two really.
Yes.
What did you, representing the BFI, feel about this gamble?
I had to find out that he had these two boys. He was trying to keep me in the dark as much as possible, because he felt that the minute that he told me, then I had some influence and some opinion. And he didn't want me to have an opinion. He wanted to control everything. And I let him have his head when I felt that was okay, and I didn't let him have his head when I didn't think it was okay. He had a way of working with the actors and the non-actors, which was very much his own, which was say as little as possible, do as little as possible, which meant that there was quite a lot of tension in the actor, which he captured. Also, do as few takes as possible. I mean, in that he was following, consciously or unconsciously, the Satyajit Ray way of working. He very rarely did more than one take, and Bill used to rage if he had to do more than two. Partly because with a non-actor, by take 3 they're acting. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to have an actor acting, because they have the training, yes, yeah. But to have a non-actor acting, well, you've lost it. Along the same lines, I remember when he was talking to the actress who played the grandmother, and there was a previous scene that she had shot where she goes across the yard and knocks on the door next door, crying out, "You hur," with a knife in her hands. And she said, "Oh, Bill, you didn't tell me," because I don't know what script he gave her, or if he gave her any script. She said, "You didn't tell me, Bill, that my son was having an affair with the lady next door." And he said to her, "How would it have helped you?" So, I mean, he had been an actor, as you know. So I think he kind of knew the difference between a screen actor and a theatre actor. And he knew that for the screen actor, it's the moment that matters. And how you achieve that is a mystery. It's not straightforward. You don't just tell people and then they have a discussion with you, although some actors need that. But he obviously knew that she didn't need that. And so therefore the mystery, the other thing about that was that it made the non-actors and actors equal. It equalized, the situation, because although there were these professional actors, they didn't know what the hell they were doing, really, in the whole. I mean, they knew what they were doing at the moment. And so therefore, in a kind of neorealist way, he made them into non-actors, and whether he had thought this out or whether it was an intuitive decision, I don't know, but it certainly had the result that you couldn't tell who was the actor and who wasn't. He was a filmmaker's filmmaker because he had a style of his own. I mean, everyone's trying to be an auteur, but actually we don't have many auteurs. The world doesn't have many auteurs. I always remember David Story looking at a fine cut of My Ain Folk, and he said, "How does he do it?" I said, "Do what, David?" And he said, "How does he get rid of the film unit to go from here to the screen as if the unit didn't exist?" And I said, I don't know. That's what auteurs do. He had a very concrete idea of what he wanted out of the sequence, out of the shot. And his intuitive sense of mise en scène, of setting the scene, is remarkable, really, in British cinema. It is remarkable. I mean, for people who think, that this is a French term and it's all load of snobbery and so on. I mean, it is just remarkable how he can make a shot live. There's something about him as an original. I think the way that he told the story, the way that he set up a scene, the way that he focused on the characters, through the minutiae of what he did. And human beings, in his films, there are lots and lots of shots of people just looking, observing, making up their minds, changing their minds, assessing, evaluating, taking the world in. And we watch them taking the world in and sort of bringing it out again. And doing things which are so tiny, of such little significance. I mean, there would only be of significance in real life if you were in psychoanalysis. I mean, it really is the psychoanalyst view of the world, and that is that out of the minutiae, the little slips and mistakes that people make, out of very, very small gestures, of the odd word, that is really a way into the soul of the characters who are speaking. And it's kind of cinema at its most adventurous, at its boldest, because you don't notice the style, you notice what you're being told. The emphasis is on the, not the means, but the effect. Rather than, as it were, being a self-conscious sort of critic or intellectual, who's trying to impress the audience, that you're moving the language of cinema forward and so on.
Did he freely use you as a sounding board? I asked because I get the impression he was quite secretive about who he would discuss his ideas with.
I think he gave away as little as possible. I mean, if he told me things, it's because I asked and kept on asking. And I think it's quite right. I think that the artist should be secretive. I'll tell you why, because you don't want the pressure to go out of the balloon. The thing is that you want that tension, and the thing is, I didn't ask him too many things. I asked him things which I thought I needed to know, but I was quite happy for him to play his cards very close to to his chest. So I wasn't that interested in the means of how he got to do what he did. I was interested in giving him as much room and as much support as I could, which sometimes meant being fairly tough on him and saying, look, you can go up to this line, but no further. But I always felt that I was there to help him. I never felt he was the enemy, although he felt I was the enemy. But then I think he needed to. The thing that I discovered by the time that My Ain Folk came round was that in every film, somebody had to be sacrificed. In the first one, Bahram Manouchery was, the cinematographer. Bill made a terrific fuss about him and that he couldn't work with him and so on, and he had to be sacked. And then he felt okay, and Mick Campbell joined as cinematographer. Now, on the second one, other people were sacked, and the minute that person was sacked, it's as if the poison had somehow seeped out with the person who was sacked. He needed on every film to have a black sheep. When they had the trouble on my Ain Folk and I had to go out there and, on the red eye to Edinburgh, and I spent 8 days there. I mean, I was wholly miserable for 8 days. And to see Bill working, I was just wholly miserable. And I remember Peter Harvey, who was then the sound recordist. I mean, since then he's become a distinguished, cinematographer. But he's quite tall, and Bill is what, 5'6", 5'7", I suppose. And Peter's 6'2". And he said to me one day, he said, he's such a pain. He said, I could thump him, but he terrifies the life out of me. There's something about his kind of commitment and his need to make that film, which is way beyond wanting to make money or to be successful or to get laid or to be famous. I mean, he's famous or anything. He wanted to make that film for reasons which were really for him matters of life and death.
How important was Peter Jewell to him?
Look, of course I can't tell. I mean, all I would say is that without Peter Jewell, I don't think we would know the work of Bill Douglas. I'm absolutely certain of that. Quite how he supported him emotionally and intellectually and so on, well, you can't tell because, this is a very close relationship. And you don't know, what he took from Peter and what Peter took from him. But I have this very, very strong sense, meeting them both together and separately, is that without Peter we wouldn't have had Bill the filmmaker. I mean, this is as simple as that. On a practical level, on the level of, I suppose, that Bill must have shown him everything that he had written. And so therefore, Peter's comments and criticisms must have been really very important to him. I mean, I would guess that at that level of a collaborator, I mean, at least a person to whom he submitted his work and was interested in hearing the response. Yes, I mean, I would say that it was very important.
What's your abiding memory of Bill Douglas?
I think it was the shock when I saw that first set of rushes. I'd been an editor, and I'd seen good rushes and bad rushes, and I saw this and I thought, my God, how do you get intensity? I mean, I have no answer to this. How do you get intensity into a shot? I mean, most people, because of the tradition in Britain, will tell you it's to do with the performance, but it isn't. The performance is certainly part of it, but it's to do with the place where you put the camera.
Yeah.
And what to that kind of mystery of what cinema is. And Bill achieved it. In the first set of rushes I saw, and I thought, my God, he really can do it. He can really, people can write on a script. There's an intense moment, and you think, well, maybe you can hope. But he was able to, with the, I mean, there's a kind of, his minimalist style, which I suppose in a way would be fashionable today. He was able to achieve enormous emotional tension and intensity and poetry. And it's a mystery. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. And I remember suddenly realizing who we had on board. I thought originally we had an intelligent filmmaker on board, and that's I thought, hello, this man is an artist. He's different.